Hey everyone, Mr. P and Mr. Dave here. We are the Geeky Guys, and this is a Tea Break podcast special.
It is Mr. P. Yeah, we're back. We've been away a little while after our sojourn into recapping and discussing the Star Trek TNG movies. We had a little break, not a tea break, just a break. But we're back, and as you say, with a special episode. And the guy we've got on tonight, he's very much in the same ballpark as you were with Star Trek. He's currently living in LA. He's an actor, an author, an archivist, consultant, interviewer, and producer. The jack of all trades, pretty much. And it probably best came to worldwide recognition when he did his Star Trek TNG companion book or manual from Pocket Books.
Was that red covered one?
Yeah, I remember seeing it years ago, but apparently it was a big seller. It was very good. We are going to have to read it at some point. He did also play Dr. McCoy, Bones, in Star Trek Continues, which was a like Indiegogo fan-funded film, which was really good. Went down really well with the whole Trek audience, to be honest, which was nice. Put everybody together, and it just had that classic feel about it. So obviously he did that, and he's also been a bit of a consultant as well over the years on certain things, and obviously people know him from Trekland and Portal 47. And by now you should know that we're talking about our good friend, Mr. Larry Nemecek.
That was all very kind. Every time people talk about the companion now, I always want to say, if they're over 40, they know it or something. It's like, it's kind of fun. It's kind of a divide, which is why I'm very proud to have Stellar Cartography also on the credits list. Nice.
Yeah, we joke about this a little bit, but you've probably forgotten more than we know about Star Trek, and we're big.
Now, guys, what I always say is, people say he's a walking encyclopedia, and some of that may, in true in many ways, but my bigger thing is I don't claim to know everything. I just try to know where the bodies are buried or who to go ask. That's the most important thing.
I'm gonna write that down. That's good advice there.
Yeah.
Don't ever, because people want you to know something to the nth degree, like on 5 seconds. And maybe 30 years ago you could do that, or 20 years ago you could do that, and certainly not now with all the Kurtzman era going. That's good, because they're having the audacity. It's nothing to you guys, I know, but they're having the audacity to make Star Trek not in LA, which is really annoying.
Yeah, it's a bit odd, that, isn't it?
All these people that said, it's not free the way God intended Star Trek to be. I just, no, that's fine. But Star Trek is not being made in LA, which is what God intended to be. But I guess I'll get over it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I guess it's cheaper production costs, that kind of thing up there.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of economic, at least in the beginning, it's economic. So anyway, but anyway, here we are.
We are, yes.
We was actually talking to an actress a couple of months ago from Canada, and she was actually saying that Vancouver and Toronto and places around there where they're doing a lot of filming for a lot of series at the moment is kind of being classed as North Hollywood now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, just apart from Star Trek, especially 5-10 years ago, it was, you might say it was like, I don't know, it was like an arrogance of LA's and in California to think, well, how dare you go somewhere else and film? But they just economically, they let things get away where they didn't, it was cheaper to film, and they wouldn't give tax breaks and things. And now they're finally, a few years ago, they started to make baby steps. That's why Picard was made in LA, was because they gave it a big tax break, and it's, thank goodness. But no, it's just, I think there was a lot of generation, you think about actors and and all the writers are still here. They fly to Toronto to and Canada has hiring. Boy, what a topic to jump in on, but I guess we're talking modern Trek. This fits in it. You start thinking, well, a lot of the actors live there because of the hiring quotas they have to do, which is understandable. That's what's going to happen with well, hey, we'll make it cheaper for you, but you got to hire Canadians. I mean, I get that. That's fine. I'm not being weird about it. I'm just being sentimentally silly about it and saying, for a lot of industry support, I mean, I'm not talking just actors and even writers and producers, but I mean, the prop people and extras and walk-ons and all down the line, catering people. I mean, all that kind of thing. It's part of the mix. And there were a lot of people that if they're not too old to have worked an 18-hour day again, but people from 20 years ago were looking forward to having Star Trek back here if it was a live type of job, and for not to be here was kind of like disappointing. But then there are still a ton of people, writers, visual effects people, art people, who work all over the place. I mean, they work from home, and then they work from home in the pandemic anyway. But even before the pandemic, they were working at home and literally phoning it in, or, you know, modeming it in. And so that's kind of unchanged, and they're all over the place. And a lot of, you know, but the writers are still here in LA, and a lot of the post-production is still here in LA. So anyway.
Yeah, I know. I was watching, me and Mr. P have been listening in on the Delta Flyers podcast with Robbie Duncan McNeil and Garrett Wang. And they actually said the other day on this same subject, which was quite interesting. They used to have a prop building studio section actually at Paramount. And they said that it's such a shame now that they don't build things on site. You know, such a lot of it's moved away.
Yeah, and a lot of that's not Star Trek. It's just Hollywood and the studios, and it, you know, like the heyday was, you know, the MGM and the, you know, I mean, the 30s and 40s and 50s was the heyday of that. And when the studio system, air quotes, when the way they did actors on contracts, and when everything went independent, that was kind of a shakedown. But even then, when you know, the Berman era, well, original Star Trek 2 at Desilu and then Paramount, but even into the 80s and 90s and aughts, there's still a lot of, they used to talk about Paramount being its own little city, and there'd be like there was like a hairdressing place there, and it wasn't like, I mean, like actors could go over and have their hair done, but I mean, like anybody on the lot could go over and do that. Or there was, you know, the lighting department had tons of lights that shows on the lot. It was a whole thing of shows on the lot used those lights, and they paid for a rental in their budget to the studio to keep them up. But then they would rent them to people off the lot. But at the same time, for a long time, when this was the thing, when we had paper film in cameras, the light shop there was a camera shop where you could go get photos developed quickly, which was a good service for, again, pre-digital cameras. If you were taking if you needed you know, like a record photography done, like you were taking makeups and sets and props, and you wanted that done quickly, and you went to go off the lot, and if there was a security element to it, and you wanted to get beyond crappy Polaroids, even though that was also currency for a long time, you could just go over and have photos developed, you know, in a day or in 6 hours, and get them back to you. And of course, everybody else, a lot of people just use that for their Photoshop, especially if they were charging it to a budget anyway, somehow. It was a perk, you know what I mean? But there's just a ton of little things like that when they would say, oh, it's like a small city here at Paramount. And it really was. And you had 2 or 3 places to eat, you know, the big restaurants, and then the little, used to call it, now they call it the Circle, or used to call it the Circle P, but it's the Water Tower store now. But it was like a convenience store type thing, market. Now they've made it into a little quickie go deli. Anyway, there's a lot of those things. And then movie wise, filmmaking wise, there was a huge prop rental place, which, you know, it's not so much did people go in there and rent something. It's stuff that sat there for 50 years on shelves, but you could like something like Star Trek, which made so much of its own stuff anyway. But when they did a holodeck show or something, and they needed periods or weird stuff, they could go in and get that, and hopefully not overuse it. But anyway, but a lot of that's the big studio-y things like that are gone, and so much of it now is just like, we just want the space for stages to rent for the income, and we're not thinking so much about having a big empire here all under one.
No,
anyway, sorry, I got off on that, but
no, it's fine.
So part of that, a lot of that's not because of Star Trek, or because Star Trek wasn't filming. It was just the evolution of Hollywood and the business model, and much less we're losing stuff to other parts of the country. So, you know, the lot's not as crammed, or it's all Dr. Phil and talk shows and stuff on the lot now, and they don't need things like that. So
no, it's not somewhere where people are going for 7 years to make a TV series, is it?
Right. or it's if it's on the lot, it's you know, the old 8 and 9 stages for Star Trek for all the years have been NCIS LA for a long time, and famously upgraded the stages. And there's a little slender building where that was they called them the gold rooms, but that's the slang for where a set dresser keeps their running stuff. On Star Trek, it was like a big sconce collection. You know, the light, every alien world had to have its own like lighting, the flat lighting fixtures on the wall, or every room on a ship. But every, if it not props, but if it was regular stuff or it was specialty things they used to show a civilization or whatever. Anyway, and then the upstairs were a lot of Mike Westmore's makeup lab rooms. And it was like a little skinny building with an upstairs and a downstairs. And it was knocked down when NCIS went in because they used, and it was just a little alley and then a little skinny building that was maybe 20 feet wide or 30 feet wide. And then a bigger alley and then the bigger, buildings behind that. Yeah. And that little skinny building was knocked down soon after Enterprise went down, and NCIS LA went in, and the exterior of their building, if you ever watched the show, but anyway, when they come out of their little kind of quasi hidden building outside, that's a real life outside. It's the outside of they knocked a door through the stage wall, which was kind of weird. And they built that little open, the little, not lobby, but the little porch
type area.
That's all just the side of the stage. And so when they come out of that, they're coming out basically into the alley outside the studio, outside that stage 9. So that building went down so they could just move. They've got more places to park stuff. And if they're going to have crews and cameras out around that, but I'm sure it was all a very big economic thing. They went, okay, can we lose this building? Do we gain more by tearing it down than we do by, Yeah. Anyway, well, there was a tangent to start with. Wow.
It's fine. I like tangents. I was going to say, actually,
tangent. Okay.
I was going to say, we're obviously during the pandemic at the moment, and we've obviously had lots of lockdowns and things, and people have had to work from home, just kind of jumping back in there. So going forward, do you think, just on industry as a whole, do you think that's going to change the way or will it revert back to how it was before? Or do you think because people have sort of had to work from home and do things remotely, do you think that will continue at all? Or?
It's like I think with everything, it'll probably vary from, industry to industry and hobby to hobby or whatever, passion to passion. But I think, and it like in education and whatever, in religions, in whatever people are doing, and it'll some sliver that will remain in some way. Conventions, fandom, but there are some things that are just a pain in the butt to have to do distance wise, and the protocols they've been developing to shoot with here and in Canada, anywhere, they seem to be, we're getting stuff done. Yeah. Obviously, I don't think anybody enjoys recording scores, one instrument per Zoom box, and then we're going to go, that's a pain. Yeah. So I don't know what good that is, unless you happen to have a recording session and you want somebody from North Tanzania and they can come in and record with, the group, and then they're there and they're recording and we add that one person. I'm exaggerating here, but I can see it being used for exceptions and saves and fixes, maybe just open people's, it's a tool now.
Yeah.
So it opens up, but regular shooting, and now what's funny is if there are sidebar, let's say, expectations, along the way that came with Zooming, once people are back live, maybe something that happened because it was Zooming, even though we're going virtual, even though we're back live. I think, I'm sure it happened, but all the time we're shooting this way, we're shooting with social distancing. Has the incidence of, harassment or the incidences of the bad side of being, together, some of those things, like have some of that, it's kind of like when we were all locked down and not driving and air pollution got better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, was there an unintended happy consequence here of this? And can we keep that going? Much less the all the social effects that people get into with healthcare, and like here in the States, it's like all the things that were exposed because of the pandemic. Yeah. We couldn't treat everybody equally because they not logistic, forget healthcare. Not everybody could afford to have internet, so they couldn't Zoom. Just all the things that you get into, school kids, not every kid had internet in their house, so they couldn't do a virtual, all that. Right. So the good side, even if there's not shooting by virtual, hopefully some of the sidebar, the surrounding issues around being virtual will hang on. So but I think everybody we all miss having personal connections with people. So
social creatures, aren't we, at the end of the day, human beings. So we do crave social interaction.
Yeah. So, you know, and if people were able to now, the other thing may be flipping it when people wish they could have been virtual, like I said, visual effects, art people, I don't know, good, just business meetings. Maybe somebody's on the road, and instead of having to miss or phone it in, they can actually, you know, there's a tri-cornered meeting, you know, their terminal in the middle of the table.
That we can actually work this way if we need to. And
right. And people are over the hump of it being weird. Now it's just, okay, we've got it as, so it's not, and if you're an underling, if you're a low person, you don't worry that, you know, I had to miss a meeting. And so now I'm going to be like, they're going to at me if I'm not in this meeting, but I'm sick today. Well, if you can come in by Zoom, people are over the hump of it being a weird thing, right? Or now what? No, I want you here in person, you know, spreading your germs. Well, that's another thing. It's like people now are like, you know what? You're coughing. Why don't you stay? You know, instead of get your butt in here, I don't care how sick you are. Maybe we're hopefully looking at that a little differently too. But anyway, yeah, is it just as a tool, virtual tool for the odd one out, and it's not a big inconvenience for everybody else. You know, we just have a laptop on the table, and Fred's coming in by Zoom with us because he's got to do so and so.
Yeah. I think definitely got positives, hasn't it?
Yeah. Take the
right. Yeah.
Let's go right. Let's tax your mind now, Larry. Let's go right back to the beginning. What was it that first got you into Star Trek in the first place? Because obviously we've talked about how you're knowledgeable and involved within Star Trek you are, but how did that all come about?
Well, my stand on a there's like individual and the meta. The meta thing is that I had a lot of interest when I was a kid, and I grew up not totally out in the boonies, but not in town. We were out on an acreage, but I had lots of things to do, and I had a ton of hobbies. Now today we'd say I was just a nerd about a lot of things, but back it was like you had a lot of hobbies and interests. And but I was a big NASA kid. I loved everything but the space program, and when I was a kid, we were getting into the Apollos, and I had, you know, space stuff all over my walls. And somehow at an early age, and maybe it was because of the generations, both my parents were greatest generation. Now, I always said I had depression parents. I don't mean they were depressed. I mean, they grew up various stages of the depression. My dad was in World War II. So I was, you know, and it wasn't like we were drowning in it. It was, but for some reason, I was just a big history kid, and I loved history, American history especially, but when you're little. And between my space interest in history, I guess I was kind of primed for Star Trek. That's where I came to Star Trek, not from reading tons of sci-fi, although I read sci-fi, and you know, it was a time when they would laugh about sci-fi movies and TV being a joke, but we watched, you know, Lost in Space, of course. I mean, you know, it was on there, but it was also, you know, it was a 3-channel universe, and here in the States, and I mean, we didn't even really have, when I was a little kid, we didn't even have PBS yet. That was like a little later, but that's kind of the meta. But then, but I like collected stamps, and I built models, and I had model rocketry, and we played outside. I mean, we played outside. I had bikes, and we ran around, but we had like Tonka trucks, and we built roads in the dirt, and I mean, you know. But also, the meta individual reason, or the not meta, is my 9th grade science teacher, Miss Pollard. That's not her name now. I finally found her, but one day. And I want to say I was kind of a teacher's pet, but there were probably about 8 or 10 teachers. She was first year teacher out of college, and she was all, you know, bright and happy and excited and all that. And one day when there was kind of a break and we were kind of over something, I was walking by her desk, and a couple of girls were with her, and they were all giggling together. And I looked at them, and they all had blue dots on their forehead. And I'm like, what do you guys do? Like, they'd take a pen and just put a blue. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And she goes, we're Hawkins. And I go, what? And she said, we're Hawkins. And I go, what are you talking about? And I'm like, because there was Ajax Blue Dot Cleanser then. And it was like, that was a thing. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she said, we're Hawkins. I go, what? And she goes, oh, Larry, don't tell me you don't watch Star Trek. I'll never forget her saying that. And I was like, what? Because it was after school, right? Every day at 4 on Channel 5, KOCO TV. Anyway, she goes, you go home today and start watching Star Trek. I can't believe you're not watching Star Trek already. Because it was the Blue Dot Hawkins from Mirror Mirror, the people that they were going to terrify. You have to know the tags. They have to know the teaser scene. And no, Captain Kirk, if we gave you our dilithium, you just use it to make war. So I was like, okay. And I'm like, okay, that's that show with the guy with the ears, right? I mean, like I was vaguely familiar, but I didn't control our TV. So, okay, well, I'll watch in my weird mind. And this was when the cartoons were still on Saturday morning. I was like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I won't believe that show, but I'll try it as whatever the hell logic this meant, whatever world where this logic made sense. It wasn't Vulcan, I'm sure. It's like, I'm going to watch it as a cartoon first. And then if I like it, I'll watch it every day, you know, the live.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why that made sense, but that's what I did. So I think when I think about it, I must have watched like, although I remember like flipping channels and coming across, I remember one afternoon, definitely I know now that it was the whirly emotion vampire from Day of the Dove. I was flipping channels and going, well, that's weird. It was Kirk and Spock in the corridor looking up at the whirly ball. But anyway, but I watched a cartoon and I went, oh, okay. And then I started watching after school because, you know, it was after school. We were all bored anyway. And that was it. And then, you know, they stripped it every day, 5 days a week. And there's 79, 80 episodes. So do the math. That's like every 3 months it would cycle back around. And after a while, you watched it through once and you kind of got savvy about things. And then it came back around again. And you're like, wait a minute. I thought, what? Wait, why is she wearing a gold dress this time? You know, or something, you know, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Wasn't that on the left last time or something? And it's like, you'd watch. And I remember getting into arguments with guys at school, which when the technical manual came out, I was like, haha, see, I told you the patch matches the uniform color. I remember being very on top of it because I figured that out.
Proud of that one.
Yeah, very proud. Anyway, but that's and then it was all, you know, but I had that in the mix of things. But I went to school for, I was, you know, I wound up studying journalism. I wanted to be in radio and TV, but I went to a college that didn't have it as a major. So don't ask me why that all happened. But anyway, so I wound up in theater. So I wound up acting and doing, you know, stage stuff, but also speech. And then came out and journalism, and then wound up, I was going to work in government or journalism when I decided not to get a doctorate in theater and teach it because I was exhausted. Right. So on the scholar side, so I went back and worked in news for 10 years. And by that time, Star Trek cycled back around. And a lot of things happened that led to my annual concordances that I did to mock BJOs, to update BJOs for Next Gen. And then that's what led to the companion. And then we were off and running. And from Oklahoma to LA, I'll say that. Yeah.
My to be honest, it kind of mirrors mine, I suppose, in a way, because with respect, it was Next Generation, not the original series. Yeah. But it was, Get Home After School.
I was a rerun kid. Let's get that clear. I was a rerun kid. I was not a 60s. That was a badge of honor for a lot of people, and it should be. But I was not watching it in NBC.
Yeah, you was quite young in 66 still, wasn't you?
Yeah. I was, I always said I was a rerun baby. And that was back when you didn't have to explain which shows reruns. You just said you were a rerun baby. And for 20 years, that's all there was. Yeah.
Yeah, I moved TNG, came in from school, just caught an episode, really liked it, and then just watched it every night as it was on. And no one told me about it. I just started watching it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, she did. But other than that, nobody did. Nobody in the family did. So, you know, it wasn't like, and that's great. Like when all the generational trekking that's happened, you know, we need to get past just reproducing and having kids to expand the audience. But all the people that say my uncle or my granddad or my mom or my dad or my uncle or older brother, sister, whatever it was that got me into it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And that's great. But I didn't have that. We didn't have that. Yeah.
I think it was similar for me. Somebody mentioned it to me at school in the, I would have been 88 or 89, and that first started me into Next Generation, and obviously went back after that and watched the original series and caught up with those. But it was TNG for me first introduction to Star Trek as well.
I do have a confession. Although I have actually watched everything except I still have not finished the animated series yet. I've got the box set; it's on the shelf. I started it. This was a while ago, and I just haven't. I didn't got to about me at the time, but maybe I should try that again. But apart from that, I have seen everything else. But that's the one thing. That's the one little
Now, Mr. P, there's only like 22 of them and they're half hours. So, you know, or 22 minutes or whatever. So
get them watched.
I will. I promise you. That's, yes, it's the Geeky Guys page that I will.
And they're all over the map, but some of them have, you know, it was like, what can we fix? What is it we can fix that we didn't do on the original series or we did wrong? So it was like, it was not only like the first comeback, it was like the way to fix, like even the second door on the bridge fix, you know, like, my God, why is there only one door to the bridge? If they, you know, block that door, they're stuck or whatever. You know, and Uhura's in the command chair twice and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And I guess they could do a lot more in terms of aliens and things because they don't have to worry about prosthetics or makeup or that kind of thing. You know, you don't just the same guy every week that's been dressed as someone different.
Right. So that's why we have the major division in fandom today. You know, the thing that's got fans divided around the world is where's Eric's and Maris? I mean, you know, that's the big. I'm kidding, but yeah, it would be fun to see them live action or CG'd or something, or even more, or any of those planets they visited at that time, just, you know, in the background walking by or something. Although that's the kind of thing that Lower Decks does now that you guys are finally able to legally see it. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing Lower Decks does. So
we'll I think during our conversation today, we're not going to use terms like legally see it. We're just going to assume that everything we've seen, we watch legally.
A nice caveat, yes.
But yeah, I loved Lower Decks. I absolutely loved it. It's like it's Star Trek, but you can kind of sit and just relive that sort of youth where you sat and watch cartoons, which I still love to do anyway, because I'm a big kid. And yeah, I thought it was.
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was brilliant. And I love the fact they had Riker and Troy on the last episode. That was just amazing.
It's the Titan. Yeah.
That's just
finally seeing the Titan on screen properly.
Yeah, animated, but hey, we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Well, you know, there was I think one of the biggest surprises of the lockdown year and people going, what will this be like? And we're fine, you know, whether they liked Discovery or they were just curious what the new format was going to do for Discovery, or they were all curious about Picard, right? Because it melted down the internet when they walked out on the stage at Vegas and said
I was there and I missed it. I was at the con and I hadn't gone in the room. I was walking around the autograph room right on the corner, and then all of a sudden it was this big hoo-ha. Were you the same? And it's like, I actually saw it online. I could have been sat at home here, not in Vegas. I was like, hang on a minute.
So close,
and
yet so far away.
Back. What?
Whoa. It's like, couldn't believe it when you came back and said you'd missed it.
I know.
That's the sad thing about
with Jonathan Frakes either.
That was the thing about being table bound, was I heard people saying, oh, Adam Malin's going to come out, one of the co-owners of Creation. Adam's going to come out and make some announcement at 4 o'clock or whatever it was, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, they're either going to announce next year's dates or they're going to say that Creation's giving up the license or, you know, whatever. Okay, fine, whatever. Like I was bad enough about not being at my table enough and off somewhere. So I was in there, and then all of a sudden the doors open and here comes this wave of humanity in, even more than normal. And people are like, people like coming in, like cramming. And I had like 82 people, 47 people all came over to my table like, Larry, they're going to be. I'm like, oh, well, that's great. I wish I had been like, I was clueless there for once. But yeah, everything was immediately online. You could immediately watch 4,700 different people's video of the moment, including CBS's.
Yeah.
But my point there was that of all the events that we watched of 2020, planned, unplanned, pandemic, and not, there were so many people who were prepared to blow off Lower Decks, or just, you know, like, well, it'd be fun, but I can't take it seriously. And they're either like nonchalant about it, it's just a fact, or they're like angry about it. But whatever the reason, they're prepared to put Lower Decks in this box.
Yeah.
And so many people, I think the biggest surprise of 2020, even on top of Picard, was that people were like, oh, I kind of like it, or oh, that wasn't near as bad as I thought it was going to be, or that wasn't near as lightweight as I thought it was going to be. And a lot of people said, I think that's my favorite of all the new Treks. Or or some people saying, I think that's my favorite Trek of all time. I mean, but it's like, it's been funny watching people's expectation of that totally flip and be pleasantly surprised.
Surprised.
You know.
Yeah.
And all the lower decks, there's tons of people that have their lower decks costumes for cosplaying already.
Yes. Even after the first episode, I noticed online on Twitter, people putting them together.
It gives White Stripes a whole new name. It's not just an aughts band, it's a music band.
Yeah. So just, I've got to ask this, and I know it's a really bad question. And you should never start a question with, this is a bad question, but hey.
Too late.
Okay. Too late. Just talking about the sort of the Berman era of Trek in the 90s, or the 90s. Which is your favorite show?
Oh, see, this is hard because and you say the Berman, like you grew up with the original series, and that was your first, and also it was all there was there was no bloody A, B, C, or D, right? For at least
no.
For me, maybe 10 years or whatever. Okay. And then Next Generation was the Next Generation and made the whole thing viable again. And then plus I waded through it. I did my concordances. I wrote the companion book, and then DS9 was the show, then the spinoffs. DS9 was, I started watching it. We were still in Oklahoma then, and we moved midway through it, and we're here front row doing stuff. And it was amazing because the cast was for the show that didn't go anywhere. I say that as the thing back then.
Yeah.
But the thing was, and before everybody looks at DS9 now and goes, oh my God, it's the show that was ahead of its time on so many ways. But back then it was just like, wow, they've got there's 4,700 characters here that the running cast. It's not just the 8 regulars on DS9. It's all of that backbench.
Yeah.
And then Voyager was the one that see my wife Janet worked on, with the writers. And I was like hearing about it every day. And we have this phrase here in the States. It's like politics is like watching sausage being made. Like you don't want to know how it happens. You just want to see the end product. And Voyager for me was both of them, but Voyager, because we were here for a day. We moved as it was being cast, and we were here for the Janeway debacle on the casting with Genevieve and all of that. And I would hear every night what was happening, or I'd be on the lot and working on things. And Voyager, like all the expectation, like the pilot was like just blew everybody away. And then they immediately backed away from the pilot. Right. And it was the network making them water things down. And that was so and Voyager to me is like the disappointment of show that could have been, but wasn't, even though it's great. We've had a whole generation grow up now, especially girls and young women. It's Janeway's Army, and it's all the other things about an awesome 7 of 9 as a character in the, it's an awesome show. Me personally, it was almost the downside of be careful what you wish for, Lieutenant, you'll get it. Because it was like watching it be made. And then Enterprise, which was it was a revelation to me, because I'd said for years, can we please have a founding of the Federation Romulan War show? Can we please do that? But I knew that they'd never do it because they were so invested in 24th century costumes and props and sets and stuff that they would never go back and read. And then when they did, I was like, whoa. And then when people started complaining that it was, it was a prequel, I was like the way I was when I was a kid and Next Gen was coming, and the old fans could not accept it because it wasn't Kirk, Spock, McCoy. And how can you call this the idea of a franchise with all the sandbox to explore was totally a new paradigm, right? And they didn't get it. And I'm a kid and I'm going, shut up. You wanted new Star Trek and Gene's doing it. What is your problem? And that's the way I was with Enterprise. It was like, no, this is what I've wanted for ages. Shut up. What is this? Guys, like, I'm sorry, 2151 is still in the future to me. It's like, what do you mean they're going backwards? So and then I was disappointed the way it first developed. And then the last year I was like, well, this is what we all expected all along, but we didn't get it. And so, the tragedy of Enterprise was that it was finally allowed to be the show that it should have been from the beginning, that if the power structure had been a little different, it might have been that way. But anyway, so that was my experience with all those. So if you say favorite show, I go original series sentimentally, of the Berman shows, Next Generation, DS9. I feel guilty for not liking Voyager more, but hard to get over the personal hump. And Enterprise is like the underdog that was my personal favorite, that by the end of it I was like, yes, this is what it could be. But the cards, the writing's on the wall and it's going to get canceled.
Yeah, I did. I actually found that myself very interesting, where they're going back to that time with the founding of the Federation and all of that. And I actually bought the books that go past where Enterprise finished, where you actually get the aftermath of the end of that series, and you get Malcolm Reed becoming a captain, and Archer's, an admiral and a diplomat.
Trip
going
not
down.
really dead, and
Trip took
like
a bit of a spike. But yeah,
so does Connor.
It's such a shame they didn't get to carry it on a bit longer.
Yeah. So it's like everybody. I used to say, well, I still do, I guess, that you never forget your first.
Yeah.
And that applies to Star Trek. But I mean, like it's hard to, although when I'd do panels and do convention talks, especially when it was just me and I had the whole hour for myself. But I always start off with, remember conventions? We used to do those.
Yeah, I do remember those very, very briefly. Is that you get lots of people in a room and talk about something. In fact, we first met you at a convention, Larry. I don't know if you remember.
Was it a DST or was it?
It was a DST. In fact, there's the picture of us in the foyer.
It's Birmingham then. Okay, yeah.
Birmingham Hilton Metropole.
Was it the last day?
That I'm not sure if that was no, that was because that was before we spent the evening in the bar drinking lots of wine.
Okay. For some reason, no, I remember taking that picture because it's off away from the bar. It was like in a calmer area. Yeah,
it was. That's right. I think we when we approached you for it, we actually went there purposely to get that shot.
The
to
get
away from the crazy.
It was good for a photo, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bars are not known for being well lit, so there you go.
Yeah, it was very well lit, wasn't it? I remember
that was a ton of.
The evening. It was the first time I met Aaron Eisenberg as well, who obviously died sadly not too long after. But yeah, it was quite nice to get the chance to meet him at the same time. And it was nice in obviously Discovery, where they had the USS Nog, didn't they?
Yes. I go, Aaron. Although on the other hand, you might say, look at all the borrowed time Aaron might not otherwise have had that he had with people. And it's amazing how, and I said this to Dave Zappone and the documentary people and Ira too, that it's someone's going somewhere. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's a very American. It's not no, it's amazing that Aaron, and nobody thought about it at the time, but that the DS9 documentary became, who knew that at the time, Aaron, first it's cool that Aaron had such a fun little kind of punctuation of a couple of scenes there, both very emotionally, and then the fun one when they kill Nog in their 8th season opening, and he gets up and stomps away from the chair. Really, guys? Really, Ira? Really? And has that funny moment, and he has 2 or 3 really wonderful moments in that really kind of evokes in post-show all the years since in the convention circuit and what they've done, what people have done with their either acting wise in their careers or what they've done on the side or their interests and causes and all that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like Chase in her pop culture hero coalition, say for one thing. Yeah. And everybody doing what they're doing on the side, and some of it ramping up just in the pandemic and what they're like Sid and Sid City and how they're kind of pioneering what a fan interaction looks like with celebrities. But how great it was that we had Aaron long enough for him to film that and have the documentary come out and everybody see that. And then like within the year to lose him and realize that his legacy, a lot of it's going to be, people are going to remember from the document, those great pieces of his personality, his character from the, and if they'd just been 4 or 5 years earlier, people might have their convention photos of him, but we wouldn't have this great, shared image like that. Yeah. That transcends what they did on the show, which is awesome on the show. It's enough what everybody did in their roles on the show. And especially on DS9, where people had these long arcs, even if they got killed off, they had some kind of an arc on the show. And if they were Damar or they were Shakar or whatever, or that's the thing. If you're on DS9 and you have R, that your name ends in R, don't look for a long life.
No, definitely
I get it. It just occurred to me. There's a new thing for your show today.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, we are going to talk about all the new Trek that's come out, but just before we do, let's just talk about the Kelvin timeline. Just a little bit about the Kelvin films, just very briefly, and get your take on those, because they were. I mean, the first one was 2009. And then
what do you call that movie? This is a quick little thing I've been doing lately. What do you call that first Kelvin movie? Just in short.
To be honest, I kind of just call it the 09 movie because it came out in 2009. Just because it's like if you say Star Trek, but that doesn't really help you. You could say the Kelvin film, I suppose. But I just say the 09 film. Generally, I do. But yeah. I mean, the production value of those was phenomenal. It was amazing, and I knew someone who went to the cinema to watch it and came away saying it wasn't a big Star Trek fan, but he said,
"Yeah, the what value? I missed that.
The production value on there.
Oh yeah, of course it was. Yeah,
fantastic." Yes. And he came away saying it was one of the best films he's seen. And he's not actually a big Star Trek fan, but just because of, I mean, it was an epic, wasn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, but, top to bottom. Yeah, merchandising and promotion as well as what was on the screen. It's the only, if you think about it, step back, the motion picture was the only, Paramount went at that like it was going to be a huge, big, I mean, they were trying to emulate Star Wars, but they were also emulating 2001 or the 10 Commandments or any other great, huge classic, Paramount epic, the way, epic movies used to be marketed, the big movie of the year. And that's the way they went at motion picture and spent a ton on top of all the everything else they'd spent. Yeah. And it's like, oh, we'll never do that again. We're going to see what the last movie made and add a 5% Trekkie growth factor or something. And, and then if it makes a ton more money than the last one did, then we'll up the budget. And if it drops, then we'll drop the, so you plot the, so 4 makes all this money and then 5 drops down. So they're haggling over 6's budget. I mean, it got to be nickel and dimey. But yeah, there'd been a break and it was all new and a whole new, people thought that, when Enterprise is canceled and Nemesis went its way, which was there were some choices made with Nemesis that didn't have to be that way. And the box office didn't have to be such a drop, but no, in the mindset of the time and the pre-global outlook at the time, it was what it was. But coming into, it's amazing. It was only 7 years later. But it was like everything turned over because you had the Viacom divorce by then, and you'd had the coming of social media by then, and that the looking at the global market as a thing, not in the US, it's this way. The way it had always been, and the Trek movies were always, here's the domestic market, that's what it is, and then the global is just gravy. We'll track it, but it'll be whatever it is. And no one's actively making movies for China or the Asian market or whatever, or India. And no one's like, well, let's throw a cast member in. Let's have this be a little anime flying through space in our in our EV suits kind of moment, in the movie where it feels like it's something out of Bollywood, I don't know, or something out of it. So that all flipped for the Kelvins. But my question there to you about what to call this just came up online the other day. I made some comment about, at the time they did this, it totally reflected the mindset that they had. And I say this, JJ and the Supreme Court, remember that, all the guys? And it was like a total range of Brian Burke, producer, knows nothing about it, his producing partner, knows nothing about Trek, down to Orsi and Kurtzman, who were, especially Bob Orsi. And this is amazing now from what people say about Kurtzman this and Kurtzman that. But they were like the Trek nerds. And Alex Kurtzman was, he was the TNG and Onward big nerd. And Bob Orsi was the original series nerd, and they were the nerd faction of the Supreme Court. And then I've gone blank on his name from Lost. Damon Lindelof was kind of like middling, and then JJ was the big Star Wars guy and knew about franchises ish. But as he said on, I still have that clip, and I still have the meme. He told Jon Stewart to his face at night, "Well, I always thought when I was a kid, I always thought Star Trek was too intellectual." I'm like, and Jon Stewart kind of reamed him out about it, but I'm sitting there going, you do know there's a camera on and you're recording this, right? Like, you're promoting this movie and you just said that. Okay. But that was the group that did it. And they thought, or at least some of them thought, that they're going to throw this budget and it was going to be cinematic and it was going to be amazing looking. And it was just going to blow. They really thought that it was going to make all Star Trek fans, much less the new audience, just forget anything they'd ever seen before. And that's what's kind of behind, and I'll say it, it's like the arrogance of calling it Star Trek. They were trying to say, oh, look, it's a reboot, it's a reimagining, it's a whatever. But was implied, and I know that because it's what was behind like the licensing. They wanted everything old to just be forgotten and dropped, and we're going to start fresh right here, which was such arrogance. And also it's like, isn't that like killing the golden goose that gets your audience there? Like, why are you even bothering to have a Star Trek movie and not look at what came before? It's like when a new coach comes into a team. I'm a big American football fan, especially in colleges, but also pro. And the new coach comes in after a bad time, but there were glory years in the past, and they come in like they're God's gift to the team, and they don't want to stand on anything of the tradition because they think they're going to make a fresh start, but they can't embrace the old. And they're like, what? And then the minute you have a coach come in who's after a long period of a drought, and they go, oh no, this happened at my OU Sooners. It's like, oh no, we're going to remember the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And the fans go, yes, yes. Well, that's what was playing here.
Yeah.
So the arrogance of calling the movie Star Trek, I was like, and then as a person that works in the media, I was like, oh, God, really? We have the franchise Star Trek. We have the original series Star Trek. No one's going to call this movie Star Trek. And so it's been ST09 or it's been Star Trek 09. It's the 09 movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, thank you. You just cheated us out of in fact, lately I heard people, what is it? There's a tagline for the movie on some of the posters, the future again, or the future reborn or something, the future again. And I had somebody say, well, I just used the tagline from the posters. And I'm like, oh, okay. That makes more sense than calling it ST09. Anyway, but you just proved my point. It's like, I'm sorry, world. That's what you forced me to do. It wasn't even like my choice. It's what we naturally fell into. Anyway, sorry, that was a rant about the title, much less about the movie. The Kelvin myself, I'm like, okay, I get it. To me, as somebody who'd watched fandom and watched the business side of Star Trek and knew that 05 felt like we literally going to wander in the desert. And have all the idiot suits and bean counters go, well, we'll have to, Star Trek's all worn out, which it wasn't. The fan films were coming up and booming. Yeah. And don't tell me that it's audience fatigue. It was producer fatigue, but that's a side issue. But the perception among the people with money and making decisions in the industry was, movie or TV, Star Trek is old and tired and needs to go away and rest. And that's exactly what the fan base didn't want, but that's silly. Yeah. But that's what the perception was. And then within a year, here's JJ going, I'm hot Mr. New Guy, and here's my deal with Paramount. And of my 10 movies, I'd like to do a Star Trek. Yeah. And because he was savvy enough to do that. No matter what you thought about what he did with it, he was savvy enough to know that. And a lot of the industry was going, what? Like, you want to do that old, tired movie and take a risk and a gamble like that? Because he knew, and he had guys in his circle that knew. And at first, when they said it's going to be first they were doing all these things, and I'm going, oh, it's going to be a reboot. Here we go, guys. We're finally going to go through a DC Marvel thing of there's a new Batman every 2 years. There's a new Spider-Man every 2 years. Oh, it's finally going to hit Star Trek. And then when it came down to, and people started to lose their shit, fanboys were losing their shit over it. And then when it came down to, actually, we're going to do an alternate universe. We're going to start in the Prime and go into an alternate. And then I was like, okay. The good news is, yay, they're going to do that and preserve everything. The bad news is this is going to be what are they going to do with it? Because a 2-hour movie is still just a 2-hour movie. And everything, I was like, I'm glad that it happened the way it did. But at the beginning, I'm like, okay, it's a movie. That means we're going to have movie actors, people who are going to go off and do other things. And whether it's good or bad, it's a 2-hour movie. Fans will get 2 hours of Trek. It's not a weekly series. And the actors are in movie world. So they're going to be movie world actors and not promote their show for 7 years every week, Yeah. So it's like, I don't want to brag, but it's like, I had a feeling this was all going to happen the way it all happened. And the upside, depending on how you look at it, even if you like them or they're mediocre, or that's what Paramount right now with this form. And I wasn't even thinking about the split, like TV versus film. I was just thinking the way the world is. Maybe like if you don't like it, but they're married to it, and it's like a case of the studio giving us something that the real fans don't like, but it's making money somehow. If you're just like enduring it, like your team has got a crappy coach or the coach you can't stand, but he's going to be there for a few years. So it's like, do you give up on the team or you just grit your teeth and get through that coach? And that's the way it was like, okay, because to me, the Kelvin, they're wonderful moments. And Carl Urban is, oh my God, my guy McCoy. He did D such a justice. But to me, it was like, let the kids go. It's like, it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
I thought we're gonna tread water for 2 or for 3 movies, maybe 4. It's like, if we can just get through the next 10 years, the pendulum will swing back. Somebody will wake up one day with the brilliant idea of, we should be doing this on small screen. It's like, oh, what a concept. But just like, you're just going to have to wait for that to come around, and it will. And it came around sooner than we thought. Because there was a new paradigm enters the thing. We have to have a stream, it's like, we have to have a 4th network. Oh, okay. Now we have to have a streaming app. Okay, what are you going to start with? Well, of course, Star Trek. What's our thing? So it's like, I don't want to brag or anything, but it's kind of like, that's all the ups and downs in the middle of that. But the people, I said, we're going to wake up the day after this movie debuts, and people are going to go, oh, wait, I don't get this next week again. It's something new. It's like, they're going to remember what it was like to be a movie. So all the people that got all glassy eyed about it, or all upset about it, either way, it's like, it's just a movie. And the day after, you're all going to wake up and go, oh, that was just a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something that you've invested 5 to 7 years of your life in, is it? It's something that you invested 2 hours, and then you can either like it, be mediocre or awful.
As a fan, or as a professional person promoting or licensing or merchandising the movie, or as an actor or creative involved in it, it's like, it's different than a TV series. Now, and the one big change though to that was, I remember we were watching the movie, and I liked a lot of it, but there were a lot of it was just off-put, and there were some old Trek folks saw a small screening at Paramount early, and like, I remember thinking with 10 or 15 minutes to go, it's like, okay, what am I going to say? And this was like in 2009. We didn't all have a million YouTubes and podcasts and things, but still, I wrote a column. I answered questions for the official magazine still. And it was like, and we went to cons, and it's like, people are going to say what I think about it. I'm going to have like all the positive, because the one thing you didn't want to do is have it fail, because that would just sink the franchise, and people would go, see, we told you it was too tired to have. It's like, no, it's the way you did it, but that wouldn't work. It would just be this blanket, look, it failed. Well, it'll be 10 years before we try this again. And you didn't want that. These people that thought, I'm just not going to go see it, and that'll teach them a lesson. I'll wait for the good one. It's like, that's not the way the world works. That's not the way business media works. But so it was like, we have to find the positive. And I'm not going to lie to people. I have to find, and it's like, somebody said, well, it was a wild ride. It's like, no, that's like your friend has a play and you go see it and you go, well, that was interesting. It's like, no, you can't do that. So I was like, I love the casting was the most awesome part of this. It's like, but within a couple of years, I figured out that this movie, Star Trek 09, was the best gateway drug for Star Trek that it ever had, because tons of people did find their way to Star Trek through the Kelvin movies, and it did take up the desert, the fallow years. Yeah, and that's what there was, and they did it fairly well, even though poor Stid Into Darkness. But I in hindsight, and I always say, you never forget your first. And for a chunk of fandom, they either didn't know where to go hang out for a long time, so they didn't show up. And then after they did start showing up, they were a little hesitant to say in public, like, yeah, my first Star Trek was a Kelvin movie. But as time goes on, it's like, no, embrace that. Like, own that. Because a lot of fans came to Star Trek through the Kelvin, and you can never take that away, and you have to thank it for that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like you say, it brings a lot of other people to the franchise, creates a bigger audience, and they can go back and watch the original series, TNG, Voyager, DS9, and they can have those experiences as well, can't they? Make their own mind up as to what they prefer.
And somewhere along the way, somebody got it. If not the team, that's not the Supreme Court, but merchandising and licensing people were not about to give up the legacy shows. That's just crazy talk to cross streams into the franchise. And after the first movie, it was kind of like, do you really want to wipe out all the first 40 years of the show now? Like, do you really want to do that? Because and cooler heads prevailed, and then it turned into let's just make something with these guys in this time and work out the rule. But to me, it's like a mirror universe show, and this is the way it's like the whole point of having an alternate universe in something like Star Trek is you're grounded in the normal or the prime, And then when you go over there, you can make a comment, or you let the actors and the writers and the designers have a holiday, and they get to go wild, and they get to play with the expectation. And then you come home again, and it has context. And the one time you kind of broke that was when Enterprise did In a Mirror Darkly, which some people say is the best episode of Enterprise, which is sad and weird. But that's the one time there was no feature of going back and forth.
Yeah.
You just had to know. And we, if you're watching it, you did, and that's okay. But to do the Kelvin universe, basically the Kelvin universe is everything is exactly what you know already until it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And unless they're going to flesh it out and when they didn't do a cartoon, I remember I asked Bob Orsi, I had a long interview with him, and I said, so are you guys planning a live action? Are you doing a cartoon? Are you, and novels and books don't count because it's good, but it's not the impact of, if you're a screen franchise, you're a screen franchise. And he's like, oh no, we're not thinking about that. And I go, then what's the point? These are just going to mark time and tread water until we get to something that's going to have more weight to it, because they're not, it's a matter of math. Then it's like, how can you be emotionally invested in something that there's not quantity of? If you're only giving people 6 hours of it versus 740 over here or whatever, what are people going to be more invested in? And bang, it's just math, people. It's the power of math.
Yeah. It had the positive effect. It got people into Star Trek that perhaps wouldn't have done otherwise, and it kept the Star Trek name going a little bit.
And it made it got a lot of respect in mainstream media circles that had still been on Star as the geek revolution carried on. And then it wasn't even so much about us versus them, geeks versus mundanes. It was also then about all the big franchises. And as Star Wars came back, and as Harry Potter was booming, and as the Marvel DC revolution happened, then it became about just giving Star Trek even a little chair at the big boys franchise table.
Yeah.
It wasn't even about what do the suits think? It was like, what do the suits think about us versus all the other big franchises? And that kind of clawed their way back that way. And I know as a fan, you're not always thinking that way, or maybe you are. Maybe you're in arguments and you're always feeling like everybody else can find their action figures at what for you guys would be Tesco, not Walmart and Target. But
yeah.
It's like, I'm tired of not seeing Star Trek toys. And that was at least one breath of hope that you would, well, now you can get anything online.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like the old, the old mass market thing about where's my guys? And why do all my friends get their stuff and I have to suffer along? Like, I'm the one, what's the worst football team in the league? I mean, it's like, you're the fan of that team now suddenly. And you've got to like wear your stuff for it if you could even find it,
It reinfused Star Trek into life again, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
We got 3 films out of it. There was talk of a 4th, and I know that was sort of, it's been touch and go.
There still is.
Yeah. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Then we couldn't get the people signed.
Hey, welcome to the 70s. That hit me too. This whole thing has been like the 70s now. Movie, TV show, movie, little TV, little movie, big movie. Yeah.
But it did, as you said, it did let us tread water for a little while till something better came along, which leads us very nicely. Did you like that lead? That was very nice. It leads us very nicely into this new era of Trek that we've got now, which is, again, production-wise is phenomenal, even if it's not in LA, apart from Picard. Let's
pay for it.
Let's dig in first with Discovery, because obviously Discovery was kind of the first one, wasn't it? Of the new batch, and it was very different.
Got a lot of people talking at the beginning, didn't it?
Yeah.
Too dark. The Klingons
went back in time
right.
again. Very much like, well, a little bit like what they did with Enterprise. We've gone back in time again.
Right.
And obviously the production value is obviously very high.
Well, we just had I kidded when we were not gritting our teeth that the president we just had in the States for the last 4 years, if there was any silver lining to any of that, it was that it made everybody run back to the history books constantly. You would be finding things from the last 200-300 years that you didn't know about, or you'd have to go back to and go, oh, this happened, or this is like the Know Nothing Party, or this is like whatever aspect of our secret our history that had been like some dusty corner, it was suddenly very much alive again. And what came up with Discovery, several things. It's a good thing. Discovery was like Voyager. It was like the motion picture in a lot of ways. It was gonna, Discovery didn't start because somebody said, hey, here's an idea, this has to be made. That's not what Discovery was about. Discovery was like UPN. It was, and like the old Fourth Network would have been for Phase 2. It was like, hey, we're Paramount / CBS, whatever thing that owns Star Trek. We're going to do a totally new thing. Like I said, we're going to launch. We need the anchor for the new. We need to start this maiden voyage with something we know. And of course, it's Star Trek. If it's anything related, if you own Star Trek, that's going to be Star Trek.
Yeah.
And so you put your foot forward with that. Okay, fine. Well, what's it going to be about? We'll figure that out. But that's what we're going to do. I mean, that's how Discovery started. We're going to do something. And it wasn't, then months later, we've hired Brian Fuller. Old fan. I was like in shock. Oh, they mean business. Okay. Because Brian was like the highest of the veteran Trek people who was not under contract somewhere else. Like Ira and Ron and anybody else you might have thought were all stuck somewhere else already, as much as you might have wanted somebody or much as you could have talked them into doing it. So here's Brian, and he's done other shows before. He's also famously done like one and dones. So, but at first you're like, yay. And then you hear about the delays and his distractions and all of this and the pressure. And the pressure, the good thing is you're launching a whole new thing for our network studio. The bad news is it's all on you to launch our whole new thing. And if this, what became Discovery had been any other standard TV project, whatever, it would have had the plug pulled. It would have been, after 6 months or whatever, and they'd spent so much money, it would have been a cut and run totally. Yeah. But because it was going to launch CBS All Access, a whole new thing. And one of the first networks to do, now everybody does, but this is before Apple, this is before Disney Plus, it was Hulu and Prime and Netflix. And then maybe one or two others. And there was no DC. There was, this was the first time somebody jumped in to say, we're going to do original programming because we're old studio. Why are we giving middlemen the money like Netflix and Hulu? Why are we doing that? We should do ourselves. And it was a Star Trek, and no Star Trek can be allowed to fail. That would be horrendous for the whole overall brand. So because it was Star Trek and a streaming startup for CBS, it had to work. So it was like the original series had to be out on December 7th, 1979, or the studio was going to lose so much money in penalty fees that they might go under. It was like, throw everything you have at this, just throw more money at it, just get it done. You need another 3 months? Damn it. Okay, get it done. And that's what happened. And then midway through, Brian's out, right? And they start going, and he's hired people, but the new people, I mean, it was like there were 3 owners, and it's not like running the thing that was already up and going. It was just birthing it. That's why I said Discovery had the worst labor pains of any Star Trek, including the motion picture, including, Next Generation. I mean, then the other thing is, if there's been a gap for a while, getting the well-oiled machine up and running again, because it's Star Trek and it's under a microscope and because it has all the expectations, it's horrendous. So now it's like it's the royal baby heir somehow has 3 sets of parents, but all the focus is on who's going to be the next king. It's like, that's got to happen, and we don't care who and what and who does it. We got to have a little bugger to hold up here at the end of the day over the railing and let everybody cheer for it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to these tortured metaphors. I've never done this before. But something about talking with you guys done it to me. But I mean, that's the pressure. That's what's under pressure. So it had the worst birth. It was like, you could watch the first season of Discovery and almost see like 3 distinct eras going by as you're watching it. And that's because that's what yielded it. The people who were being, Erica and Bowie at the end and Ted Sullivan, they were being hired like 2 months before they started filming, and they were still getting to work on the pilot. I mean, it had been in development for a year and a half. I mean, and that's why there are so many names and producers, especially at the beginning, which is another joke of streaming. There's more producers than there are slots in the season for episodes. So who needs freelance writers when the staff is fighting? But anyway, that was Discovery, and it was uneven, but still tons of new fans came to it without a lot of baggage. And it was all about representation and all about the things they wanted to do. And a lot of the cinematic was wonderful and it was great, but a lot of us didn't like the choices. and they were very much into canon. But then I find out that what people think of as canon, they're talking about concept, not visual. So people are fighting about that. And here in the States, just the fact that it was on a pay streaming, and a lot of the whole thing about God meant for Star Trek to be free. Forget the fact that you're paying cable, or whatever you were doing. So all of that was problematical. And then each season has been better for Discovery, and it's settled down. It got past the birth pangs. I think this last season, Brian's original idea was for it to be what's the term? I've gone blank. For it to be something different, like American Horror Story or whatever, where it's something different. It's the A word, and I've gone blank. But it's going to be a different, maybe you have the same cast of characters, this is the same actors cast, but they're playing different characters, but they're playing in different eras of Star Trek. And he was going to dance it like through the different eras and be awesome. Yeah. And I think CBS was like, no, we need something people can hang on to. Like, we don't have that luxury. So no, we need it. Once you start with a bunch, we're there. So this, in a way, this whole thing about jumping them into the 32nd century is kind of getting back to his original concept, but it would have been more elegant it wouldn't have been this cataclysmic thing. But I feel like now they're kind of in the skin that they should have been all along, and shoehorning it into this 10 years before Kirk, which I don't know that some of the people involved on the show, I don't think that they lost the king, and then they went through several, they went from the Tsar to the Republic to, no, I'm not trying to say that they're communists now, but I'm just saying they went through different people, different styles. Yeah. And in that turnover, nobody looked at all the creatives and said, I know you want to do something new and fresh and different. I know you don't want to feel like you're copying old things, but your challenge is to take the old and do it in a new way, but have it like keep the lines, but build it in a new way. And I think if that had happened, but between no one thinking that way, maybe, and the people that might have thought that way, or they did think that way, but they came in late and the money was already spent, or whatever reason. I think that all got mangled. And so a lot of people's reaction, mine included, to holograms that are smart and know where the furniture is in the room they're projecting into, and touch screens. I mean, I was okay with the Klingons. I got it. Species diversity. Yay. Anyway, but we all dealt with it in our own way. The show improved. And then Picard was like, okay, now the team's been together and they're going to shoot in LA. So that has to be, a karma thing. And I love Picard. And I know a lot of people liked it to start with and then didn't by the end. But the people that lump Picard and Discovery together just because they look cinematic-y, because they're modern, I'm like, okay, in 5 or 10 years, that will look silly. That's like the people that lump Voyager and DS9 together because, they look the same or something. Anyway, but I think the more we've gone on, the more, and I said this, it's like we're eventually going to have a buffet of Star Trek. There's going to be a flavor for everybody. And people, but right now you're just walking in the first room of the buffet, and the buffet is a new concept and you don't get it yet. And you didn't like the seafood in the first room, but hang on, the meat and potatoes room is coming up next, and you can have some of that if you want it. And then, and for a lot of people, Strange New Worlds may be back to meat and potatoes.
I was just about to say actually that that's they've started shooting that now as well, haven't they? And
I'm not ignoring Lower Decks, but we talked about it already.
Yes, and Lower Decks, of course. But they've started shooting Strange New Worlds as well, haven't they? But that's the next. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that, because again, we're going back. Well, we are back again before Kirk.
I think the old beginning of the 5-year mission again.
And I think
space.
Ian Anson Mount's portrayal as on Discovery as Pike was really good at playing that character. We love his portrayal, and so I think having seen that first, now we know there's going to be a show there. We're a lot more comfortable that he's there with the Spock. We love Spock from that. And, we're excited. We don't know much about it because obviously we've not really said a lot, which I kind of don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to know much about it. I don't want to see any. Well,
I mean, on this one, we do and we don't. I mean, some of the surprises, like who's going to be the, past Pike #1 and Spock. It's like, who's going to be the ancillary cast? Are you going to see any of the faces from the cage made? Although you had Yeoman Colt and they made Yeoman Colt an alien so it's almost like, why don't we just get new? Why don't we just say people are coming in and out? And like, is Dr. Boyce going to be there?
Yeah.
is maybe not. Is the black actor that's been cast, is he going to be Mabenga? I mean, there's been like rumors that, and if there was a name attached to him somewhere, like on this modern era, they never put the final. If casting in the old days, the castings, like, here's where we're looking for, the casting audition list goes out, and it's all there. And if you can get one, the whole format of the show cast wise. And the modern era is they know that's going to happen, especially digitally. So they always put fake names, right? And the fake buyer, but they have a tone to the person, but that's always fake. So if you get one, it's like, well, it'll be fun to see what this really is called. And we've done that already twice. So if you actually get your hands on something of the casting call for Strange New Worlds, you can't go by it anyway. No, but there is a black actor in his 30s, 40s who's older than the others in that were announced. And I'm sorry, we don't know his name. I don't know his name yet, so sorry. But it's like people are like, is he going to play Mabenga? That would be interesting. It would be a blow for diversity casting. And sorry, Dr. Boyce, we love you, but you're an old white guy, and maybe we don't want that right now. So and it's backstory for Boyce that we know he was in. This is his years on the ship or whatever. But whatever it is, we know a lot about this bunch. So the mystery is in what are the mysteries, and the mystery, and we even know what the bridge looks like, and maybe not the rest of the ship, but so it's like the rest of the cast. But overall with this one, they've been the one thing about these shows unfolding, it's like the master blueprint was not sat down in stone in 2006. No. I mean, in 2016, right? I mean, it's like there's been an evolution, and Section 31 was kind of in line to be the next series rolled out until we had good on I say CBS, whatever, I guess CBS still, good on them, or Paramount Plus, whatever, but good on Paramount TV for going, look at this, how can we resist the mob? We're not putting you off, we're just going to do that one first, especially in the pandemic when everything is creeping along, it feels like. And they're not developing as fast as they wanted to. In a normal world, they would be working on almost both of them already by now. But the animateds got dragged out, and then the live action ones established are dragged out. So it's a little more precious on timing, but the clock is ticking. Yeah. So they've made the decision to do Strange New Worlds next, and everybody's cheering that. And they're people are chafing at the bit to see what they do. And they've been filming for 2 months. And again, it's only. There were people that were worried about burnout, but again, they're living in the 90s. It's like, no, these are like these, as much as people gripe about them and not you guys, because you're used to this, but over here, or maybe your Trek fans are, but the 26 episode seasons, and these 10 and 12 and 13 episodes, it's like, that's great until they've run their course, if you like them. So, but that's a saving grace though. These long seasons in a pandemic would have been insane to try to do. So, Anyway, so if people are anxiously looking for it, and whether it's end of the year, I mean, the other day, the Nickelodeon, it was really about Prodigy, which is the second animated show. And like, when is it coming down the line? They only just now gave up the look and the style of the animation. And if it's the next to happen, what they're saying on Nickelodeon, because it's a tie-in there, if that's end of summer, and then, Lower Decks and or Discovery season 4 was shooting last fall, Picard delayed in LA, but started in March-ish, this month-ish, or a couple of weeks late in February. And then about the same time, Strange New Worlds in Toronto. So just by that, you would think we'd have Prodigy and maybe Lower Decks, because it's animated and they've been working on it for ages, and then Discovery, and then maybe Picard and Strange New SNW for like the beginnings of 2022, but they won't overlap. This whole thing about people worried about burnout from all the new Trek, it's like, no, they're going to be very smart and keep you subscribed to whatever you're subscribing to, and try to do them. They're going to max them. Why overlap? Because you'll lose the constant Trek theme, and you'll split up the attention. You'll split the audience on attention for things. So why not showcase each thing one at a time? I mean, both ways it makes sense. So, I mean, that was kind of what we're falling into. And then somewhere down the line, they're going to do Section 31 supposedly. And they've got 3 or 4 other ones in the pipeline. Maybe we'll finally get a Romulan War beginning of the Federation series.
It's nice to see. It would be nice to see. It'd be nice to, like you say, go back again and see the era sort of just after Kirk, before Kirk, in a sort of more genuine way.
What do you guys, you hear that, maybe I don't know how you personally felt, but like I said, I wanted to tell people to shut up and sit down. That whole thing about Star Trek's about going forward, don't go backward. And I'm like, no, I have lots of gaps in the timeline. I want to see. It's like, if you build it, they will come, but people don't know what they want until you throw it at them. But so I'd be happy to tell people that when I would hear that. And just because Enterprise may not have been everyone's cup of tea, or maybe it was by the end of it when it was a done deal, but which is why they were allowed to do what they wanted to do, which is maddening. But even then, I'm like, people go, well, I liked the last year. Why didn't they keep that up? I go, because it's like life and it's business and it's the way it unfolded. But going forward, do you guys hear that a lot from fandom about everything has to be in the future? Like, finally, Picard is a post-Nemesis series and people, weren't all in love with it. So do you guys hear that? Do you think it's less now that we're getting this buffet and people are opening their eyes to what's possible? Do you think people are starting to get that it's nothing wrong with having shows all over the map time-wise?
I think people are more open to it now, definitely.
Yeah, because we're in a position where we've had it now, haven't we? We've had this buffet or start of. So I think that format of where to put shows is already here and people are used to it. But I don't generally hear anything where people say we've got to go forwards. And
back at 5 years ago, did you hear that?
Yeah, there was a little bit, wasn't there? There were rumblings.
Yeah.
I mean, Enterprise was 2001. It's the same year that Smallville came out, and that was 2 prequel type shows.
20 years ago, guys. 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I feel old. And I remember, because I remember reading it. Yeah, this is how it was 20, because I read about it in a magazine. And it was like, oh, because they were on the same. It was like they're on the same page. It said Smallville and then Enterprise. I always remember it, and I was like, oh, 2 things I'm really gonna love: Star Trek and Superman. And I did like what they did with Smallville, just as a slight segue. But when it was announced, it was like, this is going to be interesting, because we're going to get to see, humans going out there and bumbling around and making mistakes. Mm-hmm. And they did reference the future a little bit in the show. They had to, I think.
Well, there was the whole temporal Cold War. They were like, the network was like, okay, just in case this doesn't make out, like, it's almost like they were doing an Angel Red Suit thing to Enterprise. It's like, well, if this doesn't work out, we can like vault you into the future somehow. Yeah. Because they were nervous,
I think, I liked it. I think they did, by the time it got to the end, I think they'd done it a disservice with some of the episodes. Or the way they ended it was just pants, really, quite frankly. That was, it's all a holodeck program, basically, essentially, is what they said. So
I would rather say that it was one particular holodeck and he was doing research on that one moment. Yeah. So it wasn't the whole series, but yeah, I know. So a lot of people have taken it that way.
Yeah.
But I don't.
It was all a dream.
It's Patrick Duffy in the shower. It's Bobby in the shower. And it was,
I really enjoyed it. And I think I think it'd be nice to revisit that universe, that time.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll see them a little bit.
When we've seen cast members talk about it, they always have a lot of high reverence for their time on Enterprise, and they do feel that they were cut short and they didn't have as many years as Voyager, and they didn't get as long a mission or time on the show that they expected.
There were so many stories that they still have yet to tell.
Oh yeah.
And Dave, you said it earlier, because you've obviously got the books that follow the series, and some of the things in those books would be wonderful to see visualized, I think.
Well, see, that's another thing we have now that we didn't back then, because of the way rights and the union contracts and all that kind of thing were done. Was books were totally an ancillary thing that kept interest going in the film thing. I mean, that's the business model of books. And if a show is dead, hey, we're still milking some money out of it. It's pennies compared to doing a show. Yeah. But from the standpoint of the owner and the fans are like, yes, in Star Trek's case, it invented the whole thing of fandom and not fanzine writing, but keeping, it's like, how dare you take this away from me? I'll show you. I'll keep writing my stories because I want this in my life still. That's what Trek fan fiction was about, and fan fiction in a larger way. And that had happened, but it was like 7 people in the whole country doing that versus hundreds and thousands doing it in Star Trek's case and inventing a whole thing.
Yeah.
Clubs and conventions and zines, and we have Comic-Cons now. Okay, fine. Excuse me, guys. But now, and back in the day, it was like, we're doing a show here. Throw some pennies and you guys can do novels and or comic books. And they're seen in the same light almost as as action figures and trading cards and whatever you stick it on, fine. And it's almost like a book and a comic was the same thing as a lunchbox back in the day. It's just like extra money for the franchise. But then now the writers would go, now wait a minute, because fans, if they're actively doing that, it's a navigate. And of course, the book authors, if you're doing a book during an active series, it's a whole thing of jumping and your name's on it. And in 2 years from now, if the show chooses to go off a different direction than what you did in your book, no one cares. It's like they'll all yell at you. What, 20 years from now, why did you say blah? It's like, well, back in 1989 or whatever, no one gets it. Well, we're a lot savvier now. We've got digital media. We're just more media savvy about everything. And that includes producers. And now with Kirsten Beyer is there on the staff, partly that Brian did hire her in, and that was his idea. We are going to coordinate all that so that now we can at least not have the books be an outlier. We can, and yes, time will go by and things will change and merge, but we're going to make the highest level attempt yet to try to coordinate all this and figure out a way to do it, because books move at one pace and have one kind of budget and model, and TV obviously and movies have another pace and model. And there was a series a few years ago that a Trek writer was involved with, and I've gone Michael Taylor's series. I'm trying to remember what it was, but they were going to make a big effort to coordinate the game and the series, and it was all going to coordinate back and forth, and it was a nightmare. They went into it knowing it was going to be a nightmare, but they were bound and determined to do it, and it was still a nightmare. It only lasted a couple of years. But it's hard to do. But they're making a good faith effort to, and if they do a book, they're trying to do it smartly. Like, we don't think we're going to go back here, so let's try to go back and fill that. What about Picard and Raffi before? Or what about pick a Discovery character and we'll try to fill Saru or Tilly.
Yeah.
So they're trying to do even that at the higher level than they've ever done before. And yay, it's evolution. Things keep evolving.
Much needed.
I think the bottom line basically is as much Trek as we get, we take, whether it is books, whether it is TV shows, whether it is movies, even if they are 09.
Of course, sometimes things that originally are in books or in comics down the line will appear in a TV episode or will appear in a movie. Because a good idea was, put down by a writer so many years ago. Somebody sees it and says, let's incorporate this into the next series, or it can always come round eventually.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a fanboy like, say, Mike Sussman, who in the 80s grew up with FASA gaming Trek, and then now he has the keys to the car, and now he's writing Andorians, and he goes and he pulls Andorian bits from the Andorian gaming manual of the 80s, and he throws it into Enterprise, because why not? And by then, no one's counting pennies about where something, and it's a thing. It's not like a whole plot and a character. It's just a rando thing or a planet name or something.
Yeah.
And so you get those kind of things happen, but this is like, on a way, and it's like for years, the animated series isn't canon, but that doesn't go for yesteryear, because we all love yesteryear and we all know that it was Dorothy Fontana's show. So we're not going to worry about 50-foot Vulcans or the Kazenti and where they fit in, or whatever, but we all know that yesteryear is the exception. So, even JJ takes yesteryear, and Bob and Alex take that and run with it. So there's always exceptions, and there's always the fans among the hard-bitten pros who increasingly are able to. Well, it was like when I was a kid, I didn't have any adults getting me into Star Trek because it was all new, or it was relatively new. But we've had 2 generations now come along where people could have been fans, and now you've got, Jeff Russo composing, and he's going, oh my God, I was a kid watching Star Trek after school, and now I get to write the thing. I mean, you've had enough time go by where people actually did not only were fans, but they went into all the entertainment categories of whatever they do. And they're not weird. It's not weird that they are. There's them and probably 3 or 4 others they're going to bring along. And so, I mean, the Strange New World Writers panel during the pandemic on Star Trek Day was amazing, because underneath Akiva Goldsman, almost all the other writers were like tearing up at the opportunity to write Star Trek. They were all verklempt about it. And I was like, this is amazing. I've never seen before. Any of us have ever seen a piece of film, and they hadn't started writing. They were writing, but they didn't start shooting until last month. So in the fall, they were already emotional about the opportunity and the honor and the pressure that they felt. And the little kid them was all emotional about getting to do it. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, we maybe 1 or 2 on the staff, and DS9 came the closest to that eventually. But Michael Piller and Rick Berman created the show. They weren't kid fans. They'd been working Next Gen, and not a bad job of it for a few years, but they didn't, but then eventually, anyway, I'm rambling, guys, sorry.
But then it's similar as well, isn't it, to what we've got now with the Star Wars franchise, where you've got Jon Favreau and you've got Dave Filoni, who are big Star Wars fans, big Star Wars nerds, who are now, at the head of the thing and guiding it. And
it's just been long enough.
It's doing really well.
Yeah, it's just been long enough where those people can naturally, and there were people like Mike Okuda in art department, and Rick Sternbach from day one of Next Gen were subversively putting things on Okudagram screens and designing graphics and things. For now we go, oh, well, that's a nefarious class, and here's the number. Well, no one cared in 1988 what the gibberish on the graphics were. They just got the show done. But here's fanboy Mike. It's almost like he's a plant. He's a mole. And he's setting this down for future generations. I mean, like, yeah, I was envious, but I'm so glad he was there, because he was like, I'm going to do you guys so much of a favor. And 10 years from now, we're going to unconsciously boost licensing's profits, because they're going to be able to go back and see this. And, it's amazing. It's like, well, just get the damn show done. Just get the show done, kind of a thing. But here you've got subversive fanboys in key places where it matters. Yeah. So all along you've had that, but to be able to come out front and center and not sneak around. And hey, there was a time on Next Gen where if you were too fanish, you were probably the reason things were being leaked. So you had to really be cautious about that. And if you were a fan, but you were in some area, like you were just a PA, or you were just in something where it didn't matter, especially, but you were still someone who could leak something, which is crazy, because it was the vendors that would leak stuff, not the people on staff, because they could get fired. But that was the thing. You couldn't. Now it's like, oh, look. And you've got, Akiva Goldsman talking about being at the first Trek convention when he was 10 in New York, kind of a thing. It's like, oh, now it's a badge of honor. But we want to have a mix, because we don't want to go over the cliff with fanboys and fangirls, but they're very much, if we have them, they're very much in the mix, and we're going to, it's funny. It's just funny, but that just took time to get to that place, Yeah,
it's evolution, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time.
55 years. Yeah.
55 years.
57 if you count the cage.
Yeah.
I quite like the cage, actually, just as a.
Well, I mean, time-wise, if you start Star Trek in 1964, not 1966. Yeah.
Well, we are here, and we've got all these shows, and we're really excited about it. We are going to just do one real quick thing. I know, because we are running out of time.
Yeah, I've rambled on you guys. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We don't mind. To be honest, Larry, we could sit and talk to you all day. That's not a problem. But
I know.
It's 2 in the morning next time we look.
Yeah.
Anybody else we live with, it might be a problem, but yeah. Okay.
One of the features we do on our Tea Break podcasts is called Geeky Guys Favorites, and it's not related to anything we're actually talking about. And all it is normally me and Dave would ask each other what our favorite of a particular thing is, and when we have guests on the specials, we ask them. So
okay.
So it's very simple. I've got a list of 3 on my card, and you can just pick number 1, 2, or 3.
Sight unseen. Okay, are these Trek things, or are these
it's not Trek? It's just what your favorite of yours in a particular area, and it's just.
Okay, boy, I'm horrible about coming up with favorites. Okay, I will say number 3.
Number 3. Oh, that's a nice easy one. So it's your Geeky Guys favorite question then, Larry, is What's your favorite non-Star Trek show? So have you got like a favorite non-Star Trek show that you?
A favorite.
I mean, it could be. You could. I mean, that's the question, but you can answer it however you want. I mean, it might be.
Yeah, take it how you want it.
You can always one. You might always go.
Okay, I may. Okay. Because that a show can be all kinds of things. A sitcom, a drama, a comedy. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna have to give you 2 or 3, or else we'll be here all day. Okay, and I'd be trying to do a math formula or something. Okay. So over time. So a genre show, I'll say, and maybe this isn't original. Firefly. I always thought Firefly was, as a show and as a phenomenon and as a fandom, was next door to Trek.
Oh, we love Firefly
more than anything else.
Yeah.
I loved. I'm going to just give you 2 or 3 here, and maybe somebody can find. And now we live in a time when you can go find stuff. Northern Exposure, just because I love quirky fish out of water shows. Northern Exposure, about the doctor from New York, the Jewish doctor sent out of medical school to crazy Alaska village. It was from the 90s, but it was an awesome show. And in the same way, I'm going to give you 2 sitcoms.
Okay.
Because Mary Tyler Moore, classic sitcoms, and there's tons of classic sitcoms. I'm sorry, but the one that I always fight for because it gets overshadowed is the original Bob Newhart Show. And I know this is America versus Britain, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you find it, because it was just hysterical to me, and I always thought that I always thought All in the Family and Mary Tyler Moore got more attention. And I think there was a golden age of sitcoms like that were both funny and relevant, and that was that. And yeah, we have great ones today and before. And in that same vein, the one that I always stand up for, and because it gets lumped in with others of its kind, is a 60s sitcom called Green Acres. And people lump it in with the country sitcoms back then of like Petticoat Junction and the Beverly Hillbillies. But Green Acres was amazingly wacky. They broke the fourth wall. There are like surreal moments in this. And there's some cheap jokes, but it's also, and it's of its time. I know that. There's like laugh track and all that. But when the characters are like doing fourth wall things with the credits at the beginning of the show, and they're doing bizarre, surreal things. And I mean, I could go on, and somebody says, can you come up with something newer than Firefly? I love, this is Australian, but I love Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries just because it's period and it's Aussie. And I just love, that. And I used to try to come up with one show, like the last hot show I watched, I wouldn't say now, but like the Blacklist was like aside from For All Mankind. Now we watched it all the way through. Yeah. We did watch Mandalorian. Okay, enjoyed them, but as far as like and things you want to watch over and over and over again, I love Miss Fisher. I love the theme. I love again, I'm a history guy, so even though it's Australia, it's fun contrasting the 20s of Australia with the 20s of the US. Yeah. And they did they spent the money on their budget. They spent wonderful money doing period stuff. But it's like the whole show is perpetually set in 1929. Like it's the height of the 20s before the crash. So anyway, I gave you 4 or 5 answers there. No, sorry.
That's good. Yeah.
But I did it in less than 5 minutes. So that's
good. Normally, me and Dave, when we ask each other on our standard podcast series, we don't plan our questions. We don't know what each other's going to ask, and we very often sit there going, I don't know. Probably, and then it's like, later in the podcast. We normally do it on our podcast. We do it earlier on. So with me, especially, it's, I'll come back to you later on.
Well, the deep dark. I told you I came at Star Trek from history and from real space, from NASA, and because here's my deep dark secret. But I live in this world, and it's all adjacent, and that's fine. And part of the thing about drilling down so much on Star Trek is people that just deal in like geek media or pop culture media or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a superheroes comics fan at all. I mean, I don't hate them. Obviously there's millions of fans. Obviously it's fuel to come back, from paper to big budget movies. And that it's funny because I was a kid, I barely overlapped it, but every time we talk about Star Trek and its roots or TV here in the States from the 50s and the 60s, it's all about the Western, how like 3/4 of the shows on TV were Westerns, right?
Yeah.
And even if they were a Western comedy or a Western spoof or a Western detective or whatever, you know, by the end of it, and that's where we are now with big media and comic book, you know, the Marvel and DCs, I lump them together, but all, you know, that's driving so much of the big movie business. It's like when I was a kid, like superheroes and comic books were those people that ran around in capes and had superpowers. And that's crazy. and part of the attraction to Star Trek was when Kirk would go off on a speech and go, oh, really? Think of it. Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, Lee Kwan, Colonel Green. I mean, you know, when they would do those kinds of things, and it would go, we are very definitely like, here's history and we're going into the future. And not only was it good for the moment of the metaphor and you got the idea, but it always reinforced that they were us. They were like NASA plus, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
And even to get to the point where they flesh out World War III and all the nuances of what they've done. And I'm a big boy. I get it. There are lots of, I loved Wonder Woman. You know, I loved WandaVision. I should say WandaVision. WandaVision was amazing. Speaking of all these things I was just talking about, sitcoms and TV history. WandaVision was amazing, but I didn't even know at the beginning that they were, I mean, I did see whatever it is that she and Vision are in for their one scene.
Yeah.
I never would have, I'm not enough of a, until but you know, media's going by, we got the web and I'm reading and I go, oh, okay, they are characters. Okay. And I know out there somebody's dying right now. Somebody's going, oh, Larry, don't say you didn't know who Wanda and Vision were before. Yes, I did not know. It wasn't in my radar, but I kind of remembered. But as the show went along, I knew that. I was like, okay, this is going to be Marvel characters somehow, some way. You'd read the tease, but there were so many original organic moments, like the money they spent every week for the first 3 or 4 weeks to do a different sitcom nod and shoot in black and white, all this, and recreate sets or set and flip it. It was amazing.
And 60s and 70s and 80s.
Yeah. And each era and the nuances and the people that got it right. And because I was a kid or I watched the reruns and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I knew in the back of my mind, okay, someday they're going to have to pay this off for all the comic book people paying the bills. It's like, someday this is, and so I get the point, and this is what I always call, and even in the movies that like we really enjoyed, like Wonder Woman, there always comes the moment where it's like, we got to pay the piper, we got to pay the bills, we got to pay the people that really came to this because who they thought it was going to be. And I always at some point, and when it gets there in my mind, and like goes, oh my God, this is so comic booky, and then I go, oh, that's because it is. It's like even WandaVision. They're flying up in the air and shooting lightning bolts at each other. Oh, it suddenly got comic booky. Okay, like
MCU at the end.
Yes.
The amount of just quickly talking about the amount of time that went into just the theme tunes to each one, because they recorded them all separately for every single one.
Yes. And then it's always. It was always Agatha. What was the thing? Now I've forgotten it. But anyway, it was amazing. It was hugely catchy. I knew it was coming. Not really. I knew something was coming, and something had been top of iTunes for 24 hours because I'd see the clip of what's her name, the actress being interviewed, flying by. Can you believe that was #1 on iTunes for a day? That was amazing. And sorry guys, I'm not like name dropping here, but it's not my universe. But it was amazing and clever and yay. And all of that. But I just have a bone in my body that people go, but you like warp drive. And but warp drive was like scientific and projective. And they're working on it now, you know, and teleportation and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, but Star Trek was always future projected with consultants and NASA scientists trying to, and it would go askew, but they would pull it back. And then 20 years later, somebody would try to patch it over and retcon something.
It was like dreaming of a better future, wasn't it? And you know, the science being correct as it could be.
They grounded it in science as much as possible.
Yes,
as much as possible. You know, you've got people like Andre Beaumaris, for example, whose job was to try and find, you know, some science to help that story vehicle move along. And I love that. I love the fact he actually went on to the Orville as well. That was lovely. And he went to do
science. Narain was before him, and Narain's been ran CSI, but there was like more science in CSI than, you know, it's like after all the Star Treks went down, there was no sci-fi on TV. CSI had so much CGI, like they would like do the zoom, like somebody'd be shot and the camera would like zoom into their body and track down the vein to show you it's like, that's CGI, that's keeping the CGI artists alive until there's another space show. but that's never, it's like, hey, Narain, you're doing it. And now Dr. Aaron McDonald is the science consultant, and Mohammed Noor are the science consultants, and they're awesome. And they're trying to, some of the stuff on Picard and Discovery's the last season is all, especially on Discovery, with the seeds and the radiation and all of that is like them trying to project out and have it, if it's going to be fictional, at least have it be cogent and logical and be rooted stuff.
Yeah, it's like the whole mycelial network thing, isn't it?
Yeah, which is is odd, but still the real Paul Stamets and all of that. But when I was a kid, I was not a comic book reader, so I'm sorry if I'm like deflating it, but I don't knock anybody who does. That's awesome. Go. It's not where my time, especially since my time and energy doesn't even go into Star Wars or and Firefly was only 15 episodes in a movie, so I kind of dabbled there and got to work on some blueprints and star charts with them a little bit, but it can't replace this thing. It's like, I'm sorry, I've committed my life to start my brain to Star Trek, and anything else would just be like a distraction, but I can sure sit down and enjoy. But I get to the point in anything like that where I go, okay, whatever else they've done for drama and character development, it's like, and here's the comic booky moment. Okay, they're all going to fight and speechify dramatic negative villain speeches at each other for half an hour. But no, and yet I did this, and it's like, okay, fine. But see, if the true art is something like WandaVision did, where they brought in so many people. How many of those people are going to go over and become a Marvel MCU people? I don't know. But it was wonderful entertainment.
There's quite a few of them that were pulled from the MCU into WandaVision, even if it was just a small role, and I liked that. And you can see like there's bits where they've pulled them in and they're going to throw them back out there again, and they'll be a lot more popular. And
right. And what's the closest Star Trek got to that? Star Trek 4, maybe? What's the closest vibe aside from like 09 pulling people in because it was all flashy and shiny?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think
they always said that Star Trek 4 had the biggest wides because people came in and enjoyed it. And the fact that they weren't running around in their uniforms on their ship. It was like they're running around in real life.
Yeah. I love that. I love the fact that and the humor in that film was really funny.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as like having it's like, I think the meme has always been, and it's not like everybody who bought a ticket filled out a survey. I was never a Star Trek fan. I was a Star Trek. But the vibe of it seems to be that Star Trek 4 had the biggest, broadest audience of any of the movies. Like the one-off times to go sample Trek, it was Star Trek 4.
One of those films. It's a little bit like First Contact in terms of if you took away the Star Trek from it and it just had it as a space movie, First Contact, it would still work. Go to the past to stop someone taking over. That would work as a film, and I think Star Trek 4 is kind of the same. You could technically take the Star Trek away, and as a story that would still work. Something in the future is threatening us. Yeah. Go back.
Well, and Star Trek 4's appeal to a broad audience is A, it was modern day, and B, saving whales. I mean, it's like that was very
I think your wife worked on Star Trek First Contact as well, didn't she?
Well, it happened while she was there the first 5 years of Voyager, and that happened over it. And it was supposed to be her counterpart on DS9. She had kids at home and tried to get home to them. And single guy, Bob Gillen, was her counterpart on DS9. And so they were going to have him be the assistant script coordinator to Lolita, which was getting scripts out and pages and, tabulated and reading for continuity and all kinds of things. And he would be gone some nights when they would be shooting late. And Janet would still be stuck there with Voyager because Voyager always went late. Thank you, Brandon. And, or whether it went or not, they were told to be there. So she would be there a lot of times when he wasn't, and she would get they needed her to get something done. And so at the end of that, I'll say good on Rick. They gave her, they're co-credited, but she wound up doing almost as much work as he did. So yes. And that was back in the day. And that's the thing about today. Today, you watch those credits go by, and it's like, the caterers, second assistant, dog walkers, dentist gets a credit, right?
Yeah, they're all on that, aren't they?
And today, like every assistant's assistant, every person who accidentally walked in the building, they get a credit.
Yeah.
And, but the only thing, all the years and the hours that she put in, Janet has that way, and then it was a thing of, well, if you were here when we did the finale of a series, we'll throw everybody's name in on the finale credits. So if you were here for the other 180 hours, we'll give you a crumb here at the end. And that's no, everybody and their dog is in the credits now every week. And if today was back then, yeah, you would have seen Janet every week.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on today. They should. That's just how, you look at something from the 40s and 50s, there's like 10 credits at the end of a movie or TV show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a thing that's evolved.
Big names up there, and
yeah,
that's it, isn't it, on that?
Yeah.
So going forward then, Larry, you've obviously got a lot of projects you're always working on, podcasts and so on. Is there something, I'm laughing because I know you're laughing because I looked at the notes before you came on and it was like this massive long list of all these things.
Well, maybe it's too long.
Maybe. You thought our intro was long, but it could have been a lot longer. We could have just been finishing now. Hello, Larry. Thanks for joining us.
I just need something to pay the bills. That's what we need, something to do. Yeah.
What is? I was going to say, is there anything new? But I assume it's just getting back into after things get back to normal, as normal as they can be. Getting back.
Well, right. I mean, one thing I'm really proud of that was a child of the pandemic was going to be a convention panel for WonderCon. It got canceled, and we decided, Dr. Ali Matu and I decided to make it happen every week as a podcast. Is Life Support Live, which we do on Saturdays. We say it's boldly going through uncertain times, but it's a mashup of Star Trek and mental health. And this last week, it's not mental health. It's just things to get you by, but it's also, we geek out with Star Trek, and we have a theme every week. We've done some watch-alongs for a break. We've had a couple of guests. We're just about to do by the time this, I don't know what your turnaround is. I should have meant to ask you, what's your turnaround from posting this from now?
It'll be fairly quick, to be honest. Probably within a week it'll be on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're around, and of course they're posted, so you can always catch it later. But we're coming up on our 50th episode, so almost a year.
Okay.
In lockdown here. Our 50th episode is coming up on the 27th. So we're going to have some special things there. It's going to be an Ask Me Anything. It won't be a typical theme. But we're expanding, and we multi-stream. So we're on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. We just started a Discord channel, but that's live. It's live every week, 10 Pacific, 1 Eastern, 6. I'm saying this. This is when we're in sync, and right now we're out of sync on our times.
I'm assuming that all the details are on your website.
Yes, all the details are there, but basically it's like early evening for the UK and Central Europe.
Yeah.
So it's you can totally get, and we have a ton of folks across the pond with us live. And then on Tuesdays, I have about to come up on, I'm a week away from being to episode 200 of Trekland Tuesdays Live, which is me alone with a topic, and then we do chat back and forth with who's ever in the audience. Yeah. And we keep up with things. And I've been doing that since April 2017, which was way back in the before times of live streaming. Yeah. So that's all. And that's been on YouTube. And then I have the Trek Files podcast from Roddenberry that we've been doing now for 6 half seasons that we're in the middle of season 6 with. And that's always a professional guest and something from Gene's files, letter or memo, cartoon, whatever. And we have a topic, and they're only 15. I know, as shocking as it seems after today, those are only 15, 20 minutes. And those are out every Tuesday. So every Tuesday we have a new Trek Files release from Roddenberry, and I do the live show on Tuesday. And then Saturdays is live. But also website, Stellar Cartography is on sale. People still talk to me about I have projects coming and going. My big thing, the elephant in the room, is still getting the Con of Wrath, my documentary, finished.
Yeah.
I keep getting pulled into other projects and things also. There's a big one that you just heard about in the news that I may or may not be a part of. So that's happened too. But no, and the whole thing about conventions and doing virtual panels, WonderCon's virtual panels, they'll be up whether this is in time or not. I had 3 panels. I moderated for the Voyager documentary, which is an amazing news story the last year, and I'm contributing to 2 of the perks. When we're allowed to travel, I started a new subdivision called Trekland Treks, which is tours to location sites around LA for Star Trek locations. And I'll totally do a unique tour with you.
Yeah.
That's at treklandtreks.com. And as 2 perks on the Voyager documentary, I'm going to join in on they have some away missions as some of the big dollar perks. And I'm going to be part of a couple. So a way to help out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can go to treklandtreks.com and salivate when we can all travel again and get your real life away mission. Bring your costumes, bring your travel action figures that go with you everywhere, whatever, and we'll figure out an itinerary for you. But basically at LarryNemecek.com, it's what I'm writing, my blog, our videos every week, the interviews I'm still posting on my YouTube channel. And please, everybody, my YouTube channel, I haven't been emphasizing it lately, only the last year or so. So I'm way behind on count. So everybody, please like and subscribe my just Larry Nemecek YouTube channel. So that's don't think my business coach will yell at me for leaving anything out. I think I got it.
We'll put the links on our website anyway.
Yeah.
We will.
We'll give it a push.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Basically, you haven't slowed down at all. Basically, is what.
No, and I need to get back to Well, the pandemic has been an interest. I thought, okay, well, everything's going to slow down. I'll work on the Con of Wrath, but it turned into you got to invent yourself. And here's the thing: I've been doing. Maybe I should mention Portal 47 and all this.
I was going to say that as well. Yes, Portal 47.
How about that? How about my main business? My business now is Portal 47. It's like a mini. I used to say and I still do. It's like a mini con all year long. But and for 5 years we've been doing this with people around the world in a package of events and things out of my archives and all of this. And now everybody Zooms, so that's not a new thing. But we have behind the scenes people. The bottom line to Portal 47 is it's for all the Star Trek fans who have no idea how much Star Trek they still have no idea about. So if you've been around the block once or twice, or if you're a newbie, that's cool too. But we talk about the industry and the people and all the texture to Star Trek that's beyond just the actors, because they're beautiful people and wonderful, but they only go so far. And even some of the high-end producers. So we have all kinds of wonderful guests from I've had original series people who had tons to share. We're just now getting into the modern era because it's a little dicey what CBS lets people talk about and not talk about even now. But even that's loosening up. And we had the graphic artist from Picard as a guest, Andrew Jarvis. And anyway, so Portal 47 is your mini-con all year long, even beyond what you get with, it's not a podcast, it's not virtual panels, it's a whole mix of things. And we've been steadily growing. And I invite everybody to take a look at it. We'll be having some specials again on memberships and things. There's a basic one, and then I'm about to unroll some what you might call premium level. But it's a very, very, it's a good group, and it developed. And I never stopped to think about the group on its own. But a couple of years in, this is our 5th year, coming up 6th anniversary. Every year I have an open house in the fall that's free to everybody to come to, and we have a huge guest. It's free to come in. And anyway, that's I knew there was something that I could do for Star Trek 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when everything blew up and we had nothing going on. And it's like all these people I know, and fandom, you don't see them on a convention stage, you don't see them in interviews, or maybe you do, but you see them once. And there's so much Star Trek that people don't know about, and that's not to knock all the favorites, but we see the actors constantly, and they're not short of that. And I love interviewing them. And I was a trained interviewer at the same time I was a Star Trek person. So, like we do on Trek Files every week. But anyway, Portal 47, guys. There's my official Portal 47 thing for the shows. Portal47.net. You can check it out. But LarryNemecek.com, Larry Nemecek on Twitter, Larry Nemecek on YouTube.
Okay, wonderful. Good.
Yeah, just need to go and check it out.
Anyone still awake? Okay, yay.
We're still here. Yes, so good luck with all of that carrying on, and hopefully we've got some really good Trek coming out to watch. And
yeah, we're looking forward
absolutely,
to it. Especially like you said, with the loosening up of allowing the web series, and fans can get involved in making their own Trek and adding to the story now as well. So we can have even more going forward. Yeah. Even with the big hiccup of of what happened to the fan film, the old world of fan films, and the new restrictions, people are jumping in
and moving on with it. And I should give a shout out to Star Trek Continues, and it was awesome getting to play McCoy and being part of it. You mentioned that at the very top, and that's fading in the distance now. But that group of people was an awesome, amazing bunch, from the college kids all the way up to all the voice actors and other professionals that were involved. And it shows. And there's so much love for Continues out there. It's wonderful to be part of that, and in the background too. So anyway, it
was nice to see. It was nice to see Walter Koenig and Nichelle Nichols took part in one of those type of fan films as well, didn't they? Kind of carried on, Chekhov's story and his sibling getting into Starfleet and things. It was quite nice to see that as well.
I was in a couple of phase 2s back 10, 12 years ago too. So it's been longer than that now. It's coming up on 2005 or 7. Oh my gosh, it was 2005, I think. Okay, well, we'll stop talking about that. We'll stop doing math.
We're all going to go off now, put our slippers on, and think about how old we are now. Thank you so much for joining us, Larry. It's been wonderful to talk to you. And
sure thing, guys. Geeky Guys, thanks for having me, and it's been thanks for poking me on a couple of things, though. You made me come up with some new ideas here for going forward. So thanks.
We will catch up with you very soon.
Yeah, we'll hopefully see you at a DST.
Let's hope. We'll see.
Yeah, need to do that again.
Okay. A great reunion.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, guys. Trek well.